Hey guys, what's up? This is Twisted Mind. This is our raw cap footage of our Will of the Emperor. It's our first kill that we ever got on normal. And okay, so this fight, it's an extra long one, and it does require a semi-high level of concentration for a long fight. So, it's going to make attempts pretty taxing. So you kind of want to space them out. But luckily, I found it not to be as tuned hard, and my raiders found it not to be as tuned as hard as Elegon. So theoretically, if you can do Elegon, you can do it without any problem. I think we spent a total of like either 11 or 10 kills or 10 attempts on this fight, and like I said, near the end most of them were longer attempts. Now, okay, so the fight, it starts out where you get a flavor of each of the ads to see kind of what you're facing before the boss actually comes out. So there's three ads. There's these strengths, the courages, and then these the little guys that don't really matter. The priority targets are, you want to kill the guys with the shields first. You'll see what they look like in a second. And then you want to kill the strengths. Those are the big guys. And then you want to kill these little ones. And the little ones that we're killing right now, they can be CC'd. They can be slowed, stunned, like controlled. So even if you are falling behind, you can kind of round them up and stick them in a CC. So I glyphed Psyfiend, or I talented Psyfiend, and I glyphed Psychic Scream in this fight to sort of help control that if I saw like the ads were getting overwhelmed. But that guy with the shield, that's the most important priority ad, even above like the bosses. So what he does is he focuses on a tank and slowly walks towards them, and he can't be attacked from the front. You have to get behind him because that shield will deflect all of your spells. Now, when he lands, if you're quick, you can get some dots on him, but once that shield goes up, you need to be behind him. And then the strengths, they need to go down next. The strengths need to go down next because they have a threat table. I think Blizzard intended for tanks to taunt them as they came down, but we just had our melee tank them like in the face, in the back with the other ranged, and it didn't seem to be that much damage to heal through. What they do is they do that ground slam. It's a big circle effect, as you saw. It gets bigger every time they cast it, so you kind of want to get them down fast before that gets big and out of control and like waylays your whole group. And then when that circle does hit the ground, if you didn't move out of it, you do get stunned for a second. So if you're tanking it especially, then yeah, you want to like move out of it. So another reason to have like a melee DPS tank it instead of having your actual tanks taunt it, because getting stunned on this fight for them is going to be certain death against these bosses. Now, okay, these bosses, the actual thing you're trying to kill here, apart from the ads management, there's two, so it's going to be a two tank encounter, and they both share a health pool. So multi-dot classes, you're going to get a lot out of it DPS wise, because there is two. And as you can see here, they're fairly straightforward. You just tank them. We tank them far apart like this because if you can see, they do this slash attack dance every I think it's every 30 seconds. And what this does is, you can see the animation, they get ready to slash or stomp the ground, like they can do an AoE ground stomp, and the melee have to jump out of that. If they get hit by it, they take damage, but most importantly, they take a stack of reduced armor by 10%. So as a tank, you really don't want to get hit by any of these because you're already getting hit for very, very hard. Like, I'll go into how I'm handling it healing-wise in a second, because this is a very intense tank damage fight. But yeah, it's once you get the sort of like animations down, it's really easy to avoid. So you can see our guys here are doing a really good job of getting out of it. Didn't take them long to pick it up. So it's just kind of a learn it, but here's the other incentive to do it. If you're a melee DPS or you're in melee range during that dance and you actually do it successfully, you get an extra action button that gives you a 500,000 damage nuke that you can just knock off its true damage. It doesn't get reduced by the boss's armor or anything. So you're rewarded for actually playing well, and that's going to be like really helpful because it is sort of a soft and rage type encounter, and so if you can do your job well, then it's helpful to the healers who are already going to be a little strapped on mana for the 10 minutes. As you can see here, the other mechanic in this encounter is this thing called tear gas. That's why the room just lit up and got all like terrible. What that does is it does pulsing damage, so if you're in the ranged camp or however you have your room strategy set up, you kind of want to group up for heals here, and you do need to roll a healing cooldown. We just used Tranquility there, and then when Trank came down is when I started helping with the AoE. It's pretty intense damage on top of the already intense tank damage. Is what makes it difficult. I mean, it's not hard to AoE spam heal through it, but there's still that like massive crazy melee swings that tanks are taking, so that's what stretches the healers a bit. So you see here that our tanks try to help us out by using a big cooldown during those tear gases like Shield Wall or Icebound Fortitude. And then the other thing about that Icebound Fortitude, it's a good time to use Heroism during it because the melee DPS, like anyone who can do melee DPS, gets a damage bonus during that during tear gas. So, if you're already like doing the dance well, if you're already like doing all your stuff as a melee and tear gas is out, it's a 20-second long duration that you can sync up more additional DPS cooldowns for. So that's pretty cool. Um, so yeah, basically the roles set up, it's going to depend on your comp. We assigned melee DPS to be back in the ranged camp and like helping to kill ads like almost full time. They do run in and like help on the bosses when there's nothing to do, but the ads will come faster and faster. So you do need like a little bit more of a DPS juice to get through them towards the end of the fight. So as you can see, we have two melee back with us, and then we have like one melee in with the tanks doing the dance for the extra damage boost. So that's kind of how we broke it down. The ranged are using a lot of CC. A lot of it's on our mage, but like I said, the priests are doing fears and stuff as well. And we also have the druid. Since I'm primarily focusing on the tanks, the higher health percentage that I can keep them at with my absorbs, the better it is for him because he has Cyclone and a few other CC tricks up his sleeve so he can actually help with the ranged group. And since he's more or less paying attention to them, he can also like spot heal them accordingly. Like, oh, someone's about to take damage, he'll load them up with hots, stuff like that. But okay, so that's like the macro of this fight. Now here's what I'm specifically focusing on, and this is why it's a boring point of view kill video. It's because I'm not really moving the camera much, and I'm really glued to my bars and my mana right now, like my healing bars and mana. What I'm looking for is I'm looking to see how Grace is. Like that's in my upper left hand corner on both tanks, because keeping Grace stacked on both tanks is going to be more helpful for the group than anything else I can do. I expect a Divine Insight for Discipline, which means I can get out an additional shield per penance, so I'm penancing on cooldown. Or I'm trying to penance on cooldown. So as you can see, when I get a Divine Insight proc, I look and see if my Power Word shield fell off a tank, and then I drop it on top of him, and then I go back to using heal because heal is like really mana conservative. I am not using a whole lot of smites unless the tanks are doing the dance, and even then I stop smiting if a tank took a big hit from one of the melee swings because it reduces their armor, so that means they need to extra prep for when they come out of that dance phase. They're going to be taking more damage, and I need to pay attention. As you can see here, our tank did just take a melee hit, comes out of the dance phase, I check and see what cooldowns are on him. Shield block was about to fall off, so then I throw up penance, or I put up pain suppression on him as soon as shield block falls off because I know he's going to take that increased damage. So that's kind of more or less what I'm managing. Another one of my super tricks is I'm waiting for that dance, and then I'm using Spirit Shell, and then I'm loading up both tanks with Spirit Shell during the dance so that they can come out of the dance with that extra shield on them, and then I can sort of delay using like other tricks like Inner Focus, Greater Heal, or other additional cooldowns, stuff like that. Now I did take Mindbender for this kill because it didn't take us very long to experiment with this kill. So like I took Mindbender because I didn't really know kind of how it was gonna lay down like consistency with these tanks and like dodging their melee attacks during this dance phase, because if they don't dodge it very well, I'm going to be laying in a lot more greater heals on them because they're going to be taking like a lot more damage. Like it adds up really fast, and that would be like where my mana would go. They picked it up really fast, so when I do this next week, for sure I'm going to take From Darkness Comes Light, and I'm actually also going to be juggling my Surge of Light procs. The way I'm going to handle it differently is I'm going to try to stash one at all times, just in case, and then if I get two, I'm going to try to dump one off, and I might not dump it into healing, I might dump it into instantly refreshing Grace, because like I said, I'm primarily making sure my Power Word shield is up on these targets, which means I have 0 haste essentially, and I have a ton of mastery, so the tanks can die during my 2.35 second cast of my slow heals that I'm doing, or they can dip dangerously low, and it's bad for the raid because that means my druid sees the health suddenly tank and goes, oh, what's happening, and like starts casting a ton of heals into them, and which means he's like falling theoretically behind on the rest of the raid or the rest of what's going on. So it's really important for me to keep their health levels not just like from dying, but also at a stable rate, which is why I'm laying in so many shields. And it's not as mana effective as it would be to roll Greater Heal Train of Thought and Strength of Soul, but to me, keeping in more absorbs is always going to be better here because, like, as long as I can keep their health pool sort of stable and not like up and down and up and down, the more we can keep the rest of the raid under control. My other last trick that I'm doing is during Tear Gas, I'm making sure Mending is up and bouncing around, and depending on where our cooldowns are, because we have a Tranquility Barrier rotation alternating for each Tear Gas, I'll also throw a Cascade, and since the groups are spread out perfectly in this triangle, Cascade is incredibly effective for this fight. I wouldn't take any other talent. I wouldn't even try Halo. I'd only do Cascade for this fight. But again, that's opinion. Your comp will vary. It's kind of an endurance encounter, but it's pretty easy, so good luck and have fun.